All right, man, peace. So for those of you brothers who have been on my channel for a long time, the video which really started to gather people to my channel was a video that I did on a WNBA player named Candace Wiggins, who basically acted as a whistleblower. She stated that the subculture of the WNBA revolved around the promotion of lesbianism, and that most of the players in the WNBA were lesbians, and that they tried to convert the females who were not lesbians into lesbianism. And she basically alleged that the WNBA is a sapphic cult. When I say sapphic, that is Sapphic. That is in reference to a very famous poet in the ancient world named Sappho, who lived on the island of Lesbos. That's where you get the term lesbian from. Anyway, point being is this. I stated in the video that the reason why the WNBA is not popular is because nobody wants to see a bunch of masculine females running around playing basketball. And the WNBA to this day is carried by the NBA for the strict purposes of promoting lesbianism amongst females. I also stated in that video that Andre Iguodala was mocked by many in the liberal media, the liberal sports media, let me specify, when he stated that he did not want his daughter to play basketball, organized basketball, because he did not want her to become a lesbian. He was mocked by many in the mainstream liberal, particularly black liberal media, like Jamel Hill and Michael Smith. So that brings us to Miss Angel McCoughtry, who's a player on the Atlanta Dream in the WNBA. And she has come out and stated that she believes that the WNBA players should be getting paid as much as the NBA players. Once again, brothers, I can't make this stuff up. It just shows you that many of these liberal females do not understand how the money system works. You get paid according to how much money you generate. And they have such a lack of self-awareness because of the aiding and abetting that goes on in the modern day liberal media. And unfortunately for them, they're going to find out the hard way that no, not only should you be getting paid equal to the NBA players, you really shouldn't be getting paid at all. Because professional females basketball is truly a mockery of basketball. And I don't care who doesn't like it. I don't care who doesn't like it. All it does is push and promote masculine energy amongst females, particularly so-called black females. It's used as a tool, as a method to promote the lifestyle of lesbianism. That's all it does. But anyway, they're going to talk about it and I'm going to chime in.
Welcome back to TMZ Sports. Evan here with Van and Michael J. Babcock. What's up? Could you imagine a star like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or LeBron James being forced to wear an Olympic medal or an NBA championship ring around just in the hopes that somebody would buy them a free meal?
No, that seems very tough.
It sounds outrageous, right?
Yeah.
Well, in the women's side of basketball, one of the best players in the history of the game is doing just that because she's saying she's being extremely underpaid here in the United States and she's sick and tired of it. Her name is Angel McCoughtry, and she is an absolute beast, a four-time WNBA All-Star. She's already won the scoring title twice. She's 31 years old. She's one of the best basketball players, men or women, around.
In her prime, yeah.
She's in her...
Well, no, actually, she's one of the best female basketball players, which is pretty much akin to saying that someone is the tallest midget. I mean, no disrespect. And I know certain people are going to get upset by what I'm saying. You must understand something very quickly. My channel is a pro-truth channel, and it's about order. One of the main reasons why there's so much confusion in the so-called black community is because the so-called black man has no control over his woman. Why is that? Because he has no control over himself. If the so-called black man was in his right mind, he would not be allowing this nonsense. And see, what the liberal media does is they like to perpetuate these narratives about the so-called black community that are wholly untrue and have little to no empirical data backing the sentiment, such as that the so-called black community is homophobic. As a matter of fact, the so-called black community is probably the least homophobic of any so-called community in America. I don't even think it's close. The so-called black community has wanton, not just so-called lesbians, but butch lesbians walking around trying to intimidate girls into turning into lesbians, trying to start fights with little boys. And unfortunately, because the so-called black man is not on point, he cannot restore order how it needs to be restored. That's the only way that you can bring the so-called black community from the depths that it's at. That's why I always encourage brothers to make sure that you're cognizant and aware of the type of female that you're dealing with, that you're going to inseminate, impregnate, raise a child with. Because so many cats say, oh, well, you know, I had children with this woman and now she's coming against me when I try to teach my children against homosexuality and, you know, da-da-da-da-da. Well, brother, you should have made sure that you understood the ideologies that your woman embraced before you got serious with her. So many so-called black men are having children with these women willy-nilly because they think that impregnating them will make them, quote unquote, act right. And it won't. This female here, Angel McCoughtry, she came out of the closet in, quote unquote, in 2015. And she states that some of the members of her family disavowed her. Her father is a so-called pastor. According to her, Miss McCoughtry states that she loves being in love and that she, quote unquote, spoke to God and God didn't judge her. Brothers, I'm going to touch on this phenomenon in a future video pertaining to the so-called black church when I get back to that topic. When you hear many of these liberal females talking about God and how they spoke to God, they're really talking about the voice in their own head. That is why whatever they believe, whatever their opinions are always met with the affirmative. When is the last time that you heard a liberal female tell you that they had an opinion about something, but then they spoke to God and God told them they were wrong? You never hear that. Because the God of the liberal woman is her opinion. They go to church only if the church agrees with their opinion. And sometimes I'll get liberal females or females who claim to be godly come on my channel and state that they believe a woman can teach or they believe a woman can teach children and other women, or they got a vision and God told them that the Bible was tampered with and that they can really teach. You know why? Because the Jezebel spirit and the Deborah demon are very heavy. And I'll be dealing with that in another video. But once again, it's up to you, so-called black man, to show and have the discipline that's needed in order to bring back order. Because order is not going to come from the female. I mean, look at these two right here. Look at them. They're confused. They have demons on them. They want to be men. If the so-called black men decided, you know what, I'm going to go en masse and go into hairdressing, the so-called black woman would say, what the hell is going on with our men? And you know what? They'd be correct. They'd be correct. And I also blame a lot of these silly pro-black dudes who only have a daughter and they decide, I'm going to take my daughter and raise her as if she was my son. I blame them niggas too. All right, but let's get back to the topic. This female here, Angel McCoughtry, states that she believes that WNBA players should be getting paid as much as NBA players.
She's in her prime right now, and we were trying to ask her, you know, because she plays overseas a lot. Why she plays overseas? Does she like playing overseas? Yeah. And that's when she dug into a real issue. That the only reason she's going there is because she can't get a decent living here in the United States playing pro basketball.
And that's a lie. Many of these top-level WNBA players are getting six figures. Six figures, and they're making no money. The WNBA is losing money, and they're being kept afloat by the NBA because, once again, the NBA is a woke league, and they're using the WNBA to promote lesbianism amongst so-called black women. That's the only reason why the WNBA is in existence. And when that young lady, Candace Wiggins, came out and acted as a whistleblower and stated that the WNBA has a very strong lesbian subculture and that many of the females who are straight, quote unquote, are pressured into turning gay, homosexual, whatever you want to call it, they tried to act as if she was blowing smoke, like she was bitter, like she was crazy because the team didn't want to sign her, yada, yada, yada. But it's very obvious, and I tell you brothers this all the time, when you get to that level in the professional sports world, they're all dealing with pansexuality. You have to deal with pansexuality to get to that level where they're going to quote unquote exploit you or let you shine or let you garner attention and fame. That's just how that goes. You must compromise yourself in that way. They view sex magic as being a way to show your loyalty, your fidelity to the overall cause of Cush and Nimrod, or as they're known conventionally as Pan and Bacchus. All right. So yes, the vast majority of these top level professional athletes are pansexual. They quote unquote go both ways, whatever you want to call it. And most of the time they end up engaging in orgies with many other people in the sports world and entertainment industry. They all cross over. All right. Allegedly. Let me throw that in there. Allegedly. Everything I'm saying is alleged, by the way.
She's upset about it. Take a look.
You played in Russia, right?
This man is cold. Y'all ain't seen cold if you ain't been to Russia.
I can't imagine.
It's crazy.
What was that like?
I mean, it's something you gotta adapt to. People don't speak English. It's cold. You just gotta go over there and play ball. Make that money. Pay us like you pay the men.
Now, did you hear what she said? She said, pay us like you pay the men. And then she says, I don't want to get paid more overseas. Well, the reason why you get paid more overseas, Angel McCoughtry, is because they know that they cannot get the pro male players to come play over there. So the closest approximation are the female players. See, all around the world, they recognize the fact that the so-called black professional athlete, particularly the so-called black professional basketball athlete, is the greatest athlete in the world. So they know that they can't get the men because the men already make too much money over here in the States. So what they'll do is they'll pay the women to come over there. Because when they go overseas to Russia and China and these other nations, they're treated like gods. They're feted like gods because they venerate and they worship the so-called black athlete overseas. That is why they pay these females from the WNBA more money. And of course, you have other females that are quote unquote non-black, like Diana Taurasi and many of these other famous athletes in the WNBA who also go overseas and get paid more. I understand that. But it truly is in veneration of the so-called black athlete and his and her mastery, particularly in basketball, which is a sport that the so-called black athlete is associated with worldwide more than any other sport. That's the main reason why they get paid more overseas. It's not necessarily because they view that the genders are more equal overseas. It's just that here in America, they have the cream of the crop of so-called black athletes. And they're making so much money for the professional sports leagues here that the male athletes have to be getting paid 9 figures if their players' associations are on point and doing their job. Now, as far as the women's leagues are concerned, there is no union player representative that's ever going to get them paid because they're not making any money. Their leagues are not garnering enough money for these females to be getting paid wages commensurate to the men. That's just basic economics. So the fact that she would even broach that subject shows you that she has no understanding of how much money her league is making and the dynamic between the WNBA and the NBA, which basically is that the NBA is using the WNBA as a showcase league. That's all it's for. And as I've already stated, the main point of the WNBA is to promote lesbianism. That's it.
I don't want to get paid more overseas. I want to get paid in my country.
Well, that's not going to happen because really the WNBA should have been defunct years ago.
There we go.
You're a gold medal winner. What do you do with those medals? Do you ever wear them out?
Of course. I get free meals every time I wear them out.
Really?
Let me say this. Whenever I see a female like this, I say to myself, what happened to her in her childhood? Or what happened to her the first time that she walked into an all-girls basketball locker room when she was 12 or 13 years old or 14 years old? What was she pressured into doing to feel more like she was part of the team? What lesbian predator encountered her in that locker room and quote unquote turned her out? Because that is what happens to many of these little girls. And hopefully for a lot of you brothers who decide to allow your little girl to quote unquote play basketball, that you're cognizant and aware of that. But a lot of you black men are liberal anyway, or pseudo liberal with all that black woman is God bullshit. Some of y'all are something else. Let me not throw everyone in the same pot because there also are a lot of brothers out there who are astute and on point. But brothers, please recognize that when you don't try to accentuate the importance of the beauty of the woman to your daughter, the true beauty of the woman, and you make her think that she can do anything and go anywhere and no one is going to try to attack her spiritually, that is when it's going to happen. So please keep that in mind.
Really?
Yeah.
that is incredible to me that she is forced to go overseas because there are not enough people that will watch her here that she can get a decent and she can make a decent living. And that's, to me, it's very upsetting. It's very sad.
This has long been a thing. The WNBA is actually, to be honest with you, more like a promotional league for these players. It raises their profile here in the United States. But a lot of these women, I remember hearing some of them talk about playing in Italy, playing in places like that. I was just looking up Candace Parker. She makes a lot of money in China and in Euroball and Russia as well. They get paid more over.
Yeah, because they worship the so-called black athlete over there, particularly the pro basketball black athlete. They get worshipped over there. Just read about the statues that they built for Kobe and Michael Jordan over in China, or how they know about Michael Jordan even within the interiors of quote-unquote Africa, where they claim that the people don't have television and they're not aware of what's going on in the outside world. These people are viewed as gods, man.
They're saying they make around $1 million a year playing overseas, but here in the WNBA, the highest paid player is only making around $100,000. Could you imagine Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James playing for $100,000 a year?
I gotta be serious. I gotta be honest. That's a silly argument, though.
Thank you, sir. The little Caucasian man at the bottom left, he has a backbone in regards to this topic, so good for him.
Because the interest in LeBron James and Steph Curry, these guys are massive stars who bring millions and millions of people into the seats.
But part of that is the promotional machine behind the NBA versus the machine behind the
socialism then, though,
WNBA.
Evan. If we're just going to pay them just to pay them.
Thank you, sir. Now, did you hear what he said? The person in the bottom left-hand corner, he said it's just socialism. If we're going to pay everyone equally, no matter how much attention they're garnering, no matter how much the differentiation and disparity in their skill set and their athleticism. See, the person at the top left, the Caucasian Jew at the top left, he is exhibit A in regards to the liberal movement, what I talk about. Every time that you research the so-called black civil rights movements or any movement involving demographics that have been allegedly disenfranchised in this society, it's always the Caucasian Jew that's behind it, trying to champion the cause and acting as if he wants to be at the vanguard of change. And just pay attention to what's revealed at the end of this segment here about him. While he's talking about how the women should be getting paid equal to the men, and the only reason why they're not is because they're not getting the quote-unquote exposure. They're not getting the exposure because nobody wants to see them. It's not about exposure, because when the first so-called black athletes came into the NBA, they were getting the least exposure. But because they were the best, and because they became the most marketable because of their natural physical charisma, that is when the corporations got behind them. It wasn't like they were trying to promote them. It was just that after a while, the greatness couldn't be denied. Now, when you're talking about the female athletes in the WNBA, no one wants to see them. Just like I don't sit down and watch high school basketball. I don't want to see a bunch of women running around with dreadlocks on, looking like the damn Predator, bumping chests and trying to see who has bigger biceps and all tatted up around their neck, looking like Queen Latifah and set it off. Like, I don't want to see that shit.
The bottom line is that the interest is not there for the game.
Dana White once said a bunch of years ago that he would never let women fight in the UFC. There's no interest, blah, 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 all this stuff. Guess what happened? He let women in, and the biggest star in the history of UFC is Ronda Rousey. And her and Conor McGregor. But the women's division has become incredibly competitive, very lucrative. It's doing great. And he put the machine behind them, and he's growing that.
You know what the difference is?
What's that?
The women in the UFC can really do the same things that the men in the UFC.
Right.
Bingo. They can do the same things that the men can do. They just can't do it quite at the same level. And beyond that, once again, people will try to avoid the racial component. But one of the main reasons why Ronda Rousey became so big is because she was a Caucasian woman with blonde hair who they were able to sell as allegedly being attractive and sexy. Allegedly. I never saw that, but that is how they marketed her. That's how they marketed her. And she also happened to not be a quote-unquote lesbian. So that is how she was packaged. If Ronda Rousey was some Bull Dyke-looking broad, there's no way in the world that she ever would have became so big, because they would not have been able to market her. Once again, the WNBA is never going to be big because the consensus perception about the WNBA is that they're all lesbians. And it's kind of obvious that that culture pervades that league. And then plus you're talking about so-called black women. They're not going to get behind marketing a bunch of masculine looking so-called black women, and certainly not on the level of the male athletes in the NBA. It just does not make any sense from an economic perspective. That is how you know, and how I have deduced, and how many other people have deduced, that the only reason that the NBA has the WNBA is to push and promote lesbianism. What else could be the reason? Why are you holding on to a league for 20 plus years that makes you no money if that's not the reason?
The women in the WNBA are freak athletes
No,
also.
they're
They
not
have a
freak.
lot
It's a
of
different.
Are they freak athletes or are they just freak looking? Allegedly.
It's a different
They have
game.
a lot of
It's a
athleticism that they
fundamental
showcase.
game.
Evan,
They can't.
I love women's basketball. The reality is, there are dudes right now in the 9th grade doing stuff that women have never done before on a basketball court.
Thank you, sir. And a lot of you brothers will remember a very popular WNBA player named Cheryl Swoops. And she was relatively attractive. She came into the WNBA, was a great player, was quote unquote heterosexual, then turned homosexual, and I put that in quotes, really got turned out into homosexuality / lesbianism, and then suddenly turned back into a heterosexual. Why is that? Because she got adulterated by that culture, and then was able to eventually pull herself out of it because it wasn't satisfying her. That's why most of these quote unquote lesbians are very depressed. Many of them were harassed into becoming lesbians by that culture. Or maybe they were adulterated by a man when they were a child. What they call molested. Many of them act out in that way against men by turning to women. That's how you know that the concept, the ideology, the practice of homosexuality and lesbianism is a mental issue that these people are not getting help with. Please name the last mental disease that they were able to cure. They're not able to cure many of these diseases. They can't cure you if you're bipolar. All they can do is give you a drug to sedate you, to try to calm down that aspect, those demons that are attacking that person's mind and nervous system. Same thing with what they call homosexuality and lesbianism. That's why I did a video a long time ago that was controversial called the gay gene. I believe that there is a homosexual researching scientist named Dean Hamer who tried to prove that there is a gay gene, quote unquote, that makes someone a homosexual or lesbian. If I remember correctly, I have to read the research report again, but you brothers could look it up. He alleged that that there was a disparity in the size of the hypothalamus gland from homosexuals to heterosexuals, and then it was found that he purposefully picked out brains that had an enlarged hypothalamus gland to falsify his report. So it is what it is. That's why you cannot entirely trust the scientific world, because once again, they have agendas, they have corporate backers. Most conventional scientists and the education system is backed by the Rockefeller Foundation, believe it or not. All right, but that's a whole nother video, a whole nother topic for another day.
That's a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a fact.
Yes, it is a fact. And also, not just Dean Hamer, there was another one. I believe that the scientist who did the research on the hypothalamus gland was named Simon LeVay. Yes, I believe his name was Simon LeVay. He's another homosexual, by the way. You'll find that most of the scientists that are trying to prove a genetic reason for homosexuality are gay themselves, quote unquote gay.
And that's why it's hard when you're a fan and you can see these guys high flying who are super famous, or you can go like
you can watch. They're not girls, they're women.
the women, but no,
They're
they're
women.
great.
While they're women and they're outstanding basketball players, the
yes.
only thing we're talking about right here is we're not talking about their skill level. We're not talking about we're talking about the product itself and whether or not it merits being paid the same amount as the NBA.
In my opinion, they've got to figure out a way to promote the league better, and they've got to do things to really showcase the athleticism and the incredible talent of these women.
No, sir. And this guy's just acting right now, which is a shame, because it really only shows you how deceitful and diabolical he is, and why he and his people are oftentimes attributed with those characteristics of being diabolical and purposefully deceitful. First off, how can you market a group of lesbians unless you're marketing to lesbians, which is always going to be an outer fringe demographic? no matter how much you try to promote that life choice. Who else are you going to market them to? You're not going to market the WNBA to men. You're not going to market it, for the most part, to heterosexual women who make up the vast majority of people in this country. Who else are you going to market them to? Their best alternative is to go overseas to countries that wish that they can get a LeBron James or Steph Curry to come play in their leagues in the offseason, but have to settle for some broad that looks like Steph Curry in drag. Or LeBron James with some long dreadlocks.
Who are doing incredible things on the basketball court. They might not be high flying and doing all the stuff.
What are they doing?
But guess what? Have you ever seen Steph Curry high fly and do any of that stuff? He's not a high fly dunker. He's not doing crazy blocks. He's hitting shots.
Oh, that's true, but Steph Curry is just one component in a league filled with stars that are high flyers. What makes Steph Curry special is that he's able to dominate in the NBA without having overwhelming athleticism. That's what makes him special. Now, in the WNBA, it's a rare occurrence when you have a female who can dunk. And once again, nobody wants to see that because you just don't attribute the feminine aspect with all of that confrontation that is associated with sports and competition. I don't care to see Lisa Leslie bump chest with another woman as she dunks over her. That does nothing for me. And it does nothing for most people. That's why, once again, their league is losing money and has been for the last 20 years.
Shots from all over the court.
He does incredible things.
But he does freakishly incredible things.
So do the women in the WNBA.
Do they do things like Steph Curry does it?
I'm sure they do.
Look, he said, I'm sure they do. In other words, he's just talking. He's never even watched them play.
You can't say your shit.
You ever went to a WNBA game?
No, but
I mean, that's when it starts. People need to go to games.
Wants to go to a WNBA game. Honestly, part of the reason is I don't even want to know when they happen because it's not being promoted the right way.
No, you don't know when they happen because you have no interest. You're just another liberal Caucasian Jew talking shit, trying to promote a life choice and a lifestyle to other groups that you would not allow within your own group. You would not allow within your own demographic. If the liberal Caucasian Jew saw that lesbianism was multiplying in his community, he would shut it down quick, fast, and in a hurry. But he'll try to promote that in the so-called black community.
Now look what you're doing. Listen,
here's the deal. Truthfully, we're going to a WNBA game. I'm paying.
We're going.
Next time there's a game in town where all three of us are going to a WNBA game, and we're going to support the women.
By the way, it's going to be fun. I've actually been before, Mr. Hollow Argument, Evan Rosenblum. I've actually been before, and they are fantastic basketball players.
Yeah, a lot of them in the WNBA, they have a good amount of skill. They can play, they can dribble, they can do their thing. They just shouldn't be out there doing it. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should be out there doing it. Because from a macrocosmic perspective, what does that do? That initiates and it propagates a masculine aspect to the woman, and it spreads throughout. It jumps from person to person to person to person. And once again, I guarantee you that this person, Angel McCoughtry, got turned out probably when she was 13 or 14 in some girl's locker room by some chick or by some little girl who decided that she was a lesbian and was going to see if she could turn out everyone in the locker room.
I'm not saying that now.
Go on, I'll buy the popcorn. I got you.
But anyway, that's it on that. As I stated in this video, you brothers who have daughters, please keep a watchful eye over them and make sure that you're careful about what type of sports they decide to play. Like I tell you cats all the time, I don't tell you what to do. It's just give you my perspective, and you do what you want to do. But please understand that every child, every member of the so-called black community is like a grain of sand on the beach. You might not think that you have an effect on what happens with everyone else, but you do. Everything that each one of us does has an effect on everyone else. So when you decide to be lax with your child or with your children, or you decide to let certain ideologies propagate within your home or towards your children, or even within yourself, that's going to affect everyone else, because that's going to influence others. That's going to antagonize others, and it doesn't lead to any of the things that so-called black people claim that they want. So-called black people claim that they want a stronger family structure, and they claim that they want to be autonomous, and they claim that they want to be unified. Well, you can't have that when you have a bunch of homosexuals and lesbians causing all this confusion. You cannot have that. And I'm not advocating violence or anything like that. What I'm stating is that you must instruct your child and help them understand what that mental issue actually is. Okay? And that's pursuant to scripture. All you got to do is read Leviticus 20 and 13. You can read the book of Romans, the first chapter, verses 25 down to 32, so on and so forth. All right? It is what it is. But anyway, oh, no, also let me say this before I close out. When Angel McCarthy was talking about being rebuffed by her father and claiming that she spoke to God and God didn't judge her, I've already touched on the reason why many of these liberal females claim that is because their God is their own opinion. But she also mentioned that God is love. And I told you, brothers, already, when they use that term, God is love, they're talking about Bacchus. He's the God of orgies. He's the God of sapphic love as well. All right? Lesbian love, homosexual love. He's the God of that. All right? And for the goddess version, it is the goddess Diana, the huntress. But anyway, peace.